Their defense gave up 300 yards to Julio Jones alone. Matt Ryan threw for 500 yards on that defense. As well as Cam Newton, for some reason, has tried to prove he's a tough guy. He got his bell rocked by the Denver Broncos week 1. That was one concussion. People can sweep it under the carpet if they want to. That was a concussion. Then he got his bell rung again by Deion Jones for trying to show off and, taunt the team. He got his bell rung on a goal line play with Deion Jones. That's 2 concussions in 4 weeks. Guys, I'm not being a homer on this one. I studied the NFC South. It's kind of what I do. That Carolina team is not the same team. If there's a team that can find themselves again, it's Tampa. That's the team that scares me simply because they have the easiest schedule moving forward, and they actually have a chance to kind of right the ship. As far as Atlanta's concerned, Atlanta's about to find out. We're about to find out what they're made of. They're at Denver. They're at Seattle. They have a game sandwiched at home with Green Bay, and then they're at Arizona, and they're also at Philly. This is not going to be easy for Atlanta, and we always see the Atlanta Falcons start off hot. 5-0 last year, hell from that. So I'm not just trying to say it because I'm a Saints homer. I picked the Saints to go 8-8. What I'm simply saying is if the rest of the NFC South has left the door open, I believe the Saints will be at 500 once they get past the bye week and they face the Carolina Panthers and then the following team. I think they'll get to 500. From that point on, it's up to them. And by them having so many divisional games left, I don't anticipate the Saints winning out and going 13-3 or even 10-6. But I think the way the NFC South is playing out, it's going to be one of those years where 7-8-1, 7-9, 8-8, 9-7 possibly will win you the division. And if that's good enough for the Saints, it doesn't matter how you get to the playoffs, just get there.
I think one thing that you haven't mentioned yet, and I know it's because you love this team so much, every year, with maybe the exception of 1 year, and that was when Coach Payton was on vacation, Atlanta always finds a way to collapse during the season. So that's why I'm not worried about their fast start and Julio Jones getting 300 yards. I know Julio Jones is going to play a maximum of 12 games this year, and I know the Atlanta Falcons are going to choke and end up being around 8-8, maximum 10-6, because this Atlanta Falcons team is not the 13-3 team we saw in 2012 or 2010 that had Roddy White and Michael Turner and just a very balanced offense. This is a team that is playing horrible defenses, including New Orleans, and taking advantage. They are going to have a collapse. It's going to be – they could still win the division, but people are looking at them and thinking that they're going to get 11, 12 wins, and that's just insane. This is a team that is not going to get anywhere near those win totals, in my opinion. And I'm not just saying that because I detest the Falcons, which I admittedly do. But if you look at the Falcons team, the defensive line is one of the worst in the NFL. Their offense, take away Julio Jones and Devontae Freeman, who, I mean, let's keep in mind, those are 2 very good players right now in the NFL. That's all they've got. They don't have a lot of playmakers. And I'm not going to put, a Jacob Tamme or anything up there with a very talented tight end. So if Julio Jones gets injured again and misses 2 or 3 games, it's very easy for them to go winning those 3 games to losing those 3 games. So when your season depends on a couple of players that aren't quarterbacks staying healthy, I don't see them finishing out very strong. Now, unlike you, I don't really see Tampa just finding themselves in the middle of the season. I think you have to have an identity to recover it, and they've yet to form an identity for about 5 or 6 years, more than that. And I just don't see it. Now, no matter who it is, I do think that the division winner is going to be, like you said, right around 8-8, 9-7, something like that. I'm not sure the New Orleans Saints can do it. I still have the Saints winning about 6 games. Don't hate me, Who Dat Nation. I just do. But, yeah, it's this. The NFC South sucks, okay? Let's just call it what it is. They suck.
No question, and I want to kind of throw this out there as well. I tend to be one of the guys who's more open about bashing people when I see or I read something because, let's face it, a lot of these talking heads that we see on the national media, they don't pay attention to the teams that they report on. They get a stat sheet right before they go on air. They run their mouth, they read it, they go over it, they brief themselves, and then they try to talk like they've been watching the team the entire time. They have not been. If anybody's going to lie to me and tell me that Stephen A. Smith or anybody like that has been watching every single football game that came on that day, I just outright call you a liar. It's not true. And I can't stand when they're prisoners of the moment. Julio Jones has been getting MVP consideration today because he had a great game on Sunday. Well, here's the reality of it. That same Julio Jones that had 300 yards had one catch for 16 yards against undrafted rookie free agent Ken Crowley the week before.
Yep.
I get so sick of these clowns that get on television and spew this garbage, and then everybody else, because they don't follow the teams themselves, regurgitates it. And it only makes it worse. So, I mean, I'm not sold on Atlanta. I'm not trying to say that Devontae Freeman isn't having a really good year. I'm not going to say that because Devontae Freeman is the guy who broke the Saints in half. It wasn't Julio Jones. It wasn't Matt Ryan. It was Devontae Freeman almost single-handedly. I mean, what he did to Jarius Byrd, I'm still trying to find out if Jarius Bird's ankles are okay. It comes down to simply knowing the teams in the division. And as you stated, Rev, I have no faith in pretty much – I don't have faith that Tampa's a team that scares me because they have an easier schedule, but I have no faith that they'll get it together. As I said earlier, Jameis Winston is throwing almost 200 passes throughout the first 4 games of the season. You're not going to win like that. Carolina has a lot bigger problems going on than just, Cam Newton doing his dance. Oh, by the way, I forgot to add, he also has a lawsuit that's pending against him right now because he rented out a Beverly Hills mansion and he had like almost $300,000 worth of damage. That also is going to take effect because as his bell is rung and spinning right now, he has to deal with the lawsuit. All of the distractions going on with Carolina, and they're not used to being hunted. They're not. They lost too many players, veteran leadership and stuff like that. Josh Norman, say what you want to about him, but the guy still, I mean, that play he made last year against Brandon Cooks when I believe it was Luke McCown threw the ball. And I mean, it was a perfect pass. Josh Norman just makes a hell of an interception. That's what that guy did. And he brought a swagger and an attitude to that defense that's not there right now. And as far as Atlanta, geez, I refuse to waste my time even giving them any credibility right now. We'll see what happens when they're at Denver and at Seattle. Yeah.
Look, I mean, I'm with you on all that. And when it comes to talking heads, I tell everybody this. Listen to ESPN and NFL and everything if you want. There's even some people I like that others don't. I like reading Bucky Brooks articles because he likes to hit the film. I like stuff like that. But when it comes to following your team, don't listen to what ESPN says. Go to your local writers. I recommend like Nick Underhill from The Advocate, and even websites like Big Easy Believer and Canal Street Chronicle seem to put out better content about your team than the national pundits do every week. And I'm sorry, that's just a guarantee. So, I mean, stop relying on what Stephen A. Smith says about your team when he can't even tell you, what type of snaps did these players play. Can he tell you that Craig Robertson is the reason that Phillip Rivers had 2 very wide-open touchdown passes? Probably not. He's probably going to go say Von Bell and Ken Crawley caused that when that's not true. But and I don't blame them for that. I don't expect you in a national spotlight covering sports to be able to watch. And keep in mind, Stephen A. Smith just doesn't even follow football. He does the NBA. He mentions things about the NFL. He's mentioned things about baseball before. He covers basically everything as a national head. I don't expect him to watch all these games. I don't care if it is his job. I would not sit down and watch all 32 games multiple times to study film on the NFL, and I love the NFL. I barely do it for the New Orleans Saints. So, guys, just hitting on what Brian said, don't worry about these talking heads. Study this stuff for yourself. There's plenty of people out here who are fans who are just as credible when it comes to knowledge of the game as it is when you're talking about people like Ed Werner, when it comes to your team. So just keep that in mind.
Well, gentlemen, I've enjoyed being on there, but I've actually got to go. So I appreciate you guys having on, and I look forward to coming on again.
Yeah, man. Thanks for dropping by, John.
All right, guys. Y'all have a good one, okay?
Same to you, brother.
But, yeah, man, I've always been in the same boat. And that's not to disrespect any of them, but, I mean, it's kind of like, let's say you need to get your computer fixed. And you have a Linux computer. Well, if the place you take it to repairs only PCs, but they know what a Linux is, Are you going to trust them as much? No, you're going to go to people who actually work on Linux computers, and some of y'all probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but two different types of computers. Same thing with football. Shannon Sharp might have great commentary on his show, and he's played the game. He is Hall of Fame level. But that does not mean he understands the intricacies of a Sean Payton run offense and how they run and how they play. He can only tell you what he sees on stats and highlights because that's all he has time of going out and partying. I study the Bible and I study Saints football, and I can tell you that, Nick Fairley is the best three technique we've had in a decade. That's just what I do.
And that's exactly what it comes down to. You were speaking about some of the writers that guys should follow, and we just had one on, and John Hendricks right there. So, and it's not to knock the it's the idea that you have to keep in mind, when you're listening to these guys, and that's what I stress to the fans often. It's not that, these guys don't have the credibility to, because they've established their way. I may not have Stephen A. Smith's credentials, but the one thing I do know is I know my team. I study my team. It was my job for almost 2.5 years to study the entire NFC South, which I'm back to doing now. But it's the idea that there's a reason why if I or Rev points it out, that you might want to take a look, you might want to highlight that. You put a little asterisk next to it because we're telling you from an unbiased point of view exactly what we see. So it's when Rev says that Jarvis Bird, he was supposed to, take a certain angle to get to the ball carrier, and that's why, Devontae Freeman was able to rock him like he did. He knows what he's talking about because he studied that action. He knows the angle. He understood the defensive assignments going into it. You can't tell me Stephen A. Smith knew exactly what defense was called in the assignments on because he hasn't looked at it. You can't tell me Skip Bayless can understand that, the Saints defense has 3 or 4 rookies playing on it. Like, he will never be able to explain that to you because he doesn't watch the Saints defense.
Yeah, I ran into that today. I mean, I was talking to a writer, and we don't do it. I know I don't. Brian might. He probably enjoys being right. But when I correct somebody, I don't do it so that they're like, oh, well, he's smart, and, I'm going to quote him. But there was a writer today who was talking about, some good things and some bad things that happened in the New Orleans Saints, and he said, one of the bad was Ken Crawley giving up that 57-yard passing touchdown to San Diego Chargers. I forgot who called it. Was it Inman, the wide receiver called?
Yeah.
Well, that play on Crawley, the only thing Crawley did wrong on that play was he did not jam his receiver because he was trying to listen to the secondary's adjustment call. He should have jammed his receiver, but what the Saints were playing right there was a Tampa 2 cover 2 zone, which is what they've been playing all the first half. And what that is Ken Crawley is supposed to jam and then sit on the intermediate route zone. So he's just going to take about 5 steps back and basically stop and look around him to look for receivers coming in the zone. And Von Bell actually has to cover that deep left zone where Inman is going. But because Robinson at the middle linebacker position did not drop back deep enough into his middle zone, the tight end was running across the middle seam. So Von Bell had a choice. Does he cover the tight end to his left, which is going to catch a touchdown, or does he cover the wide receiver to his right, who's going to catch a touchdown? He was in a horrible spot. Either way he picked, he's giving up a touchdown. He chose to stop the tight end because the linebacker probably has less chance of catching him. So he went after that one to try to cover that, and Inman ends up scoring. What are you going to do on that type of play? But I also don't expect people who just watch the highlights to see that because me and you watch that game multiple times, and we're like, okay, we see the personnel, we see the alignment. People like Nick Underhill at The Advocate will sit there and watch the game twice and put film articles on it. I mean, John Hendricks does that at Canal Street Chronicles. People spend hours to study that, and the talking heads are only going to get brief tidbits before each – like during a commercial break. For anybody who's not had any experience with how TV is run, especially talk shows or news, most of the stuff that they're going to talk about that next segment, a lot of what they're going to talk about they get during the commercial break on a piece of paper, and they read it from there. That doesn't mean that they didn't watch the games or that they didn't watch highlights already, but most of what they're getting comes to their desk right then. I can promise you that as Shannon Sharp, and I don't even want to say his name, talks about how so-and-so had 45 snaps in the game. They only found that out right then. Am I wrong, Brian?
Not at all, brother. Not at all.